nopp garmi yi ndaxte quality jas na amal nañ leen ay til yu toj daala poos abaaya yu yiiw waaye it amal nañ leen ay boreda yu rafet boreda yoo xam ne pour góor ñi la ak pour jigéen ñi amal nañ leen body scrub yi nga xam ne nii dafay defar seen yaram bam nice waaye it fàttewuñ fa diw yi ana sama jeeg yu pare yi quality jas na amal nañ leen fa andi cuuraay yu neex house spray ak bépp xeetu baax pour seen biir néeg dama ne atum ren jii ku sa jëkkër mere ku ne yow la neex ndaxte quality jas na ñëw na si dëkk bi pour defar sëy yi make-up artist yi bàyyi leen gannaaw ñu ngi leen fa amal ay make-up product yu quality waxu leen léegi nii foofa sa Westfield jàkkaarloog monument bi wala nga jokkoo quality jas na si 250 01 24 ak quality jas na taaral sa bopp taaral sa néeg waaye it dëggal sa alaaji aas.
Nice all the time. It's about the guys who are performing, who are ready to come and play at their best, because that's the expectation of you in the media, it's the expectation of the Gambian public, and it's also the expectation of us as a coaching staff that we have players playing at their maximum. Okay? So, in terms of the squad itself, we're naming a 24-man list, okay? Which obviously on match day, one will have to sit out because it's 23 on match day, but just for balance and competitiveness, we're naming a 24-man list, okay? So the goalkeepers, Ibrahima Jarju, Sheikh Sibi, and Lamin Seydi of Real de Banjul comes into the squad this time, so 3 goalkeepers. In defense, we've got Ibu Toure, Saini Sanyang, Joseph Cisse joins the squad for the first time. Daddy Dudu Gay, Mamadou Njai joins the squad for the first time. Omar Colley, James Gomez, and Idrissa Cisse. In midfield, we have Hamza Bari, Alassane Mane, Ibu Adams, Ibrahima Darbo, Moussa Barrow, and Ablai Jallo. In the forward line, we have Ibrahima Colley, Aliou Fadera, Moussa Jawara, Yankuba Minte, Adama Sidibe, Ali So, and coming in for the first time, Abdoulaye Cisse over at Paide, the young striker. Okay, so that's the 24-man list. Like we said, there's a few players a bit unfortunate to miss out, I would have to say. There's a few players, injuries, like even this morning, I actually fielded a phone call from one player who would have been in the squad, but an injury has cropped up and he's not at 100%, so we've made the decision to not bring someone who's 100% rather than, we want to bring people who are able to come and really push. So that's the 24-man squad. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have. I'm sure there'll be some. And yeah, so back to you, over to them.
Thank you, Coach. So as customary...
The overall performance of the squad back in June. Naturally in football is about wins and losses. We want to get many more wins than losses. So our biggest frustration in the Gabon game especially was that we weren't able to, and I think it's fair to say we were dominant for periods in that game, especially in the first half, that we weren't able to convert that dominance in play into more goals. And so for us, we come away frustrated that we didn't take not just 1 point, but all 3 points from that game. But knowing that we've got to go back and we've got to... Conversion of chances is a big thing for us, and again, this is a new era that we're trying to usher in with the national team. Everybody, I think, federation, coaches, players, the general public were agreed that we wanted to see a more front foot, more aggressive, more positive national team approach. And we've definitely seen that in the opening camp. But now the players need to understand that, well, we're going to create these chances. This is the new Scorpions, if you want. We are going to create chances, but you need to put them away. And so that was the frustrating thing coming out. Obviously, coming into this camp, our ideology, our idea about football isn't changing. For us, we want to go out, we want to attack, and we want to do that for as often as we can, at as high quality a level as we can in the games. Obviously, there's a bit of a difference in the squad. Last time out, there was a number of guys at the end of a long season were missing through injury. we welcome some of those guys back in. So I think the quality of the squad will be a bit more competitive this time around. And I think, like I've already said, when you have that competition, I think that reflects in the results that our performances deserve. So we're looking forward to the games. The two games are going to be very different than the last two. Comoros, very difficult opponent, top of their World Cup group, very hard-working opponent. And then Tunisia, someone recently described Tunisia to me as the Germany of Africa, because they always qualify every time they go, they just know how to get it done. But as the Gambia, we've got a pretty good record against North African opponents. So we go into the games confident, we respect our opponents, but we go in super confident that we can play to a level that will take points that we need. So I think in terms of strategy, I hope you'll forgive me for not, laying out a PowerPoint presentation on that for you, because we want to have some surprises for our opponents coming up. They're two very different games. Comoros are a team who are extremely hard-working. They're extremely together. They are reasonably direct as a team. They don't play too much tippy-tappy football. They like to go forward quite quickly. They make good runs from deep. And we need to be aware of that in terms of how we track runs, but also in terms of how we put them under pressure, because if players are unable to play those direct passes, then that threat of runs in behind is limited somewhat. But again, I always say football, especially when you have the players of the standard that we have here with the Scorpions, should really be 70, 80% about what we do and 20, 30% about what we need to be aware of and cautious of the opponent. So for us, it's about getting our important players on the ball as often as possible in the best positions on the field as possible. And I think if we do that, we'll be able to cause Comoros a lot of problems. You go into the Tunisia game, and Tunisia have a very experienced squad, although under a new coach. So obviously their new coach comes in, these are his first games, and so you will see maybe a strategic change from Tunisia. So we have to pay attention to their first game against Madagascar on the Thursday to see what tweaks is this new coach going to make. But look, we know that Tunisia are a side that they don't feel a lot of pressure in games, so we need to make sure that we use our strengths, our speed, our guile, our creativity to cause them problems, but at the same time understanding that if we give them too much space, that they've got players who would punish us in those situations. So it's about having the right balance in both games, really. So, but two very different opponents, but games where we think the squad, and in selecting the squad, there's different types of players in there. You look at, say, in the midfield, you have someone like Hamza Barry, who's a very good player at keeping the ball. His pass completion rate, whether it's at international or club level, is extremely high. You have someone like Ibrahim Darbo, who's very forward-thinking. He wants to get the ball, he wants to pass forward, he wants to run forward, he wants to, overlap people through the middle to try and score a goal. So different types of players that maybe the lineup that plays against Comoros will not necessarily be the lineup that plays against Tunisia. Because as with every door in this building, it needs a different key to open it. And so we'll do that. In terms of the new players into the squad, Lamin Sadi comes in. Lamin Sarr was unavailable in this camp, and Lamin Sadi's been doing very well locally for Real de Banjul. Obviously, we know he's been out on trials recently in South Africa, but even when I was here the last time, I saw him play, and he's a very confident goalkeeper. He's very comfortable with his feet as well. He wants to play. He wants to pass the ball. When you look at his statistics, even when he played for the U20s and U23s, tournament-wise, he per match was one of the highest rated goalkeepers for short passes to his defenders. So someone who's very comfortable on the ball, which is what we want to play football, but also someone who has a really high save ratio. So someone I think at 23 deserves this opportunity to come in and learn from the likes of Ibrahima and Sheikh Sibi, but also to compete for a place in the team. Mamadou Lion Njai has been doing fantastically well at Kefum. In Norway, obviously promoted last year, a mainstay of the team. good physical shape to a defender, but also very mobile. So someone who, if our fullbacks want to get a bit more offensive, can cover into the wide positions quite well. So we're very pleased about that. In Joseph Cisse, someone who I know maybe previous coaches have been interested in bringing into the national team, hasn't been successful. I spoke to Joseph quite early on, and we had some good conversations, and he's really just motivated and enthusiastic about pulling on that red jersey. He's also got a really good move recently to Cesena in Serie B, and he's been playing, starting every match as a really offensive fullback, good speed. If you need to, can play higher up the field, which gives us, I think a combination of him and any of our wingers, whether it's Yankuba, Brahima, Musa Jawara, any of those guys in front of them, I think gives you a really interesting combination in the fullback positions. And then who else do we have in there? Abdoulaye Cisse. Again, I saw him play here in the first division when I was here a few months ago. He scored a couple of goals in that game. He's went over to Estonia, and he's hit the ground running really well, not just domestically, but in European competition. And the thing I like about Abdoulaye, look, he's a young player. He's got a lot to learn still. He's only 20, but he's got good mobility as a striker. He drops into interesting positions, which allows him not just to score goals, but to get nice assists, creative assists, but also out of possession, that mobility allows him to go and press the game, which is something I think you saw in the first couple of games we want to try and do. We want to defend higher up the pitch, and that mobility is really important for us. So, yeah, the new guys coming in, but look, just because someone's named in the squad, I know I said this the last time, everybody likes new and shiny things. It's why we buy new mobile phones every couple of years, even though the old one works. We like new things, but just because you're added to the squad doesn't mean you go straight into the 11. We've got a lot of high performing players in there that the new guys will come in and compete. And look, if they deserve to play, they'll play. But there's not an expectation that they have to play in the very first time they're in the squad. Yeah, the answer, there's a couple of things we need to tidy up. I'm overall not super concerned about it. So we led 1-0, not 2-0. I wish we were 2-0 up. And we should have been. I think that's the key thing for us. I think the Gabon game gave us some really interesting information, not just about the players' ability on the pitch, but their psychology. You've got to remember that over the last few years, yes, the Gambia have been super successful, but haven't been really a high-scoring team. And so conceding, you never want to concede goals. But when you're not a high-scoring team, when you only maybe score one goal, when you concede one goal, it can put your head down. You can be like, so disappointing. And I think we saw that a little bit in the Gabon game, in that we were really on top of the game. And I know, unfortunately, because the lights went out and then the TV reception didn't come back in, what a lot of Gambian supporters did not see is at the start of the second half, we should have scored again. In fact, just prior to Gabon getting the equaliser, we had 3 really good chances in quick succession. Within the space of 40 seconds, we had 3 really good chances in the first 5 minutes of the second half. And that should have put us further ahead. And then Gabon scored a really nice goal on the counter-attack. They've hit us on the counter-attack. We've been maybe over-ambitious to really get that second goal, but excited about how we're playing and how we're being allowed to play. And we get hit on the counter-attack. And I think that knocked the wind out of the guys a little bit, because for the first 50 minutes of the game, we were the dominant team. We were the dominant team and should have been 2 or 3 goals up. And so that equaliser knocked the wind out of us a little bit. Second goal's a set piece. We need to tidy up on the set pieces. We were unhappy to concede a poor set piece against the Seychelles, and unhappy with the set piece we conceded. Unhappy in terms of how we dealt with it. So we definitely need to tighten up defensively from set pieces. There's no doubt about that. But that's been a problem going back 2 or 3 years. You can look back over the last few years, and we've conceded a few soft goals from set pieces. So we need to tighten that up. And yeah, I'm not overly concerned about it, because one, I think we were missing, if you look at all the players who were injured the last time out, most of them were defensive players. So we welcome most of them back in this time. But overall, I think our chance creation in the game is as high, if not higher, than our opponents. So one or two little tweaks, make sure we are capitalizing on our chances at the other end, and we'll be fine. Yeah. So I think in terms of, for the local league here, for the first division, I spoke to you the last time when I came in the press conference about levels. And so there's no doubt that I think everyone understands that the level here, we've got some fantastic players, but the league is quite a young league. Yeah? So most of our players who are really excelling in the league are the young guys. And then they get their opportunity, like Abdoulaye Cissé, as you've mentioned, to go outside. You know, even at the other end of the spectrum, someone like Yankuba Minte, who, you know, played locally, then went to Odense, and then, you know, and now in the Premier League. So that acceleration through the levels happens quite quickly for Gambian players. You know, like even, I'm not going to go into names, but what you guys maybe don't know is two young Gambians signed for Premier League clubs in England this week. So they're young guys. You'll not see them on the pitch for a few years, but two of our guys, our youngsters, signed for Premier League clubs. So the acceleration from playing locally here in the Gambia to the very elite level of world football is a real fast ascent for some of these guys. But what that means is we do lose a lot of our talent very early on from the league. But for the guys who are still here, if you're performing well and if that opportunity, that space opens up in the team, then I've got no problem. I've got no problem in giving players that opportunity. Now, in certain positions, it's going to be easier than others because let's look at Lamine Seydi's opportunity. In goals, we don't have that many goalkeepers playing globally. You know, I think we've got now we've got a goalkeeper who's just signed for a Scottish team. We've got 4 goalkeepers playing professionally, which means if there's 1 or 2 injuries, we've got to look maybe into the local league. Whereas at centre forward, which we'll get onto in a minute, we've got about 15 number 9s playing professionally around the world. So to get into the Gambian league takes a bit longer in terms of selection. But if the opportunity's there and we think you're the best option, we'll call you up. There's no problem with that. Yeah. In terms of the centre forward position, look, Alassane Diatta is a player we've watched very closely. He was we actually considered him for the June camp last year, but he was injured at the end of last season. He obviously started really well at Notts County, but then from April through to the end of the season, I think from the 3rd of April to the end of the season, he didn't play at all because he was out of the team. And so that meant we couldn't bring him in June. We start this season and he's done really well, and there's 2 sides to this. One, different types of players. Abdoulaye and him are quite different strikers. You know, Alassane is quite a point striker. You know, if you look at most of his goals, they're crosses, and he's a box finisher. You know, he's someone who in the 6-yard box, one touch, head or foot, you know, will score the goal with those whipped in crosses from the flanks. That and from corner kicks a big threat. Whereas Abdoulaye is a little bit more mobile, gets involved in the build-up play earlier in the game. And we just felt for these games in particular, that mobility in attack was a little bit more important than the point striker in terms of that. The other thing that you maybe you're aware, maybe you're not, the FIFA rules say that we've got to send our invitations out to clubs 15 days before players are expected to travel. 2 of those 3 goals and 1 assist were scored after that happened. So actually the invites went out and then Alassane hit form in terms of scoring goals and getting assists. So there's that. Now, does that mean we can't invite a player late? No, absolutely. We could invite a player today if we wanted, but the club could turn it down. And obviously Notts County have games because League 2 doesn't break for the international window. So he's someone who's doing very well. And we've watched the games. I'm really super pleased with how he's doing. And, you know, if he keeps doing that, I see him getting, you know, an opportunity in a red shirt before too long.
Oscar?
Yeah, I think for us going into these games, look, we've got a tough group. There's no doubt about that. You know, Madagascar, Comoros and Tunisia is a tough group. It's easy for people to look at a team like Comoros and say, oh, a small island off the coast of Africa, that a lot of people in the world, maybe if you ask them, wouldn't necessarily know exactly where it is. But I'll tell you what's also true. That's also probably true of the Gambia for a lot of people. If you say, I was watching a game, one of our players, I was watching Ibu Adams play against Derby, or for Derby against Blackburn recently, and I was sat beside another international manager at the game, and genuinely he asked me, where is the Gambia? You know, so I think we should be humble enough not, given that we would question why other people don't know about the great players and the great quality of the Gambia, both as a football nation, as a whole, we would question if people didn't know about us. So I think we should be humble enough not to have that mental approach to any nation. Beyond that, Comoros are top of their World Cup qualifying group. You know, they beat Ghana in World Cup qualifying. They beat Uganda 4-0 in a friendly game in, I think, October time. And so this is a team that have done extremely well recently. So we need to know that we need to be at the top of our level. But the thing that we have to then remind ourselves that the top of our level is a very high level indeed. You know, you look at where a lot of our players are playing their football. We've got guys in the English Premier League, in Serie A, Serie B, the Championship, the top tiers in, you know, France, in Sweden. You know, we've got guys playing at really good levels, playing, you know, even last night, Ibrahim Akali having a standout game in what is possibly one of the most difficult venues to be a standout away player in Istanbul. Yet he can come with that confidence in a pressure game in Europe and be put in what was basically a man-of-the-match performance for young boys. It's about transferring that into the national team. Because if you're not fazed by playing Galatasaray in Istanbul, if you're not fazed by playing Manchester United or Juventus, then nothing here should faze you either. So it's about bringing that, and then for those experienced players, teaching that as well a little bit to some of our younger players who maybe aren't quite at that level yet. So I think it's about bringing that high quality to the squad. It happens. Like, I've not been too worried about the referees thus far. We'll see what happens. But for us, what I've always said in my entire career, look, if against Gabon, I personally I think the referee was okay against Gabon. But you look beyond that, and if we'd taken our chances in that game in the first half and at the start of the second half, we would have been 3 goals ahead. And then it doesn't matter about the referee's decision, because the referees are humans. They can make 1 or 2 mistakes. If you put yourself 3 goals ahead in a game, it's unlikely that a referee is going to make 4 or 5 mistakes in a game. So yeah, it's about us. It's about us being better than the opponent. It's about us being better than any wrong decision that might come our way, and just being confident in our own abilities. Played on the wing. Well, no, because I also, when you see on the lineup, so the formation against Gabon was Yankuba Minte came in and played in the number 10 position, and Moussa Barrow moved into the number 8 position. Yankuba Minte is at club level, has been a winger, but also I think it's not a stretch to see why he can play quite well in the middle of the field as well. As a number 10 running beyond a centre forward, Yankuba has those abilities as well. And for Moussa, we just, if any, I don't know, I'm sure most of you have been following football here in the Gambia for a long time. You'll remember when Moussa broke through, he was a central player, you know, and he has gravitated out to the wings. But even if you watch him play for Al Tawun, pretty much every game for Al Tawun, Moussa starts in the number 11 position, but by the end of the game, for the last 20 minutes, tends to be in the number 8 or the number 10 position. So he sort of plays both, and we just felt going into that game, and then we had Aliou and Ibrahima on the flanks. So yeah, Ibrahima. We also, the nice thing about the Gambia is, and you have to, when you watch the best teams in world football, like Manchester City, like Arsenal, like Barcelona, like Bayern Munich, you see a lot of rotations happening. And I think, I'm not comparing us to those teams, but what I'm saying is when you look at that offensive players, the like of Moussa Barrow, Moussa Diawara, Ibrahim Akali, Yankuba Minte, Aliou Fadera, you can immediately in your own head say, oh yeah, they can swap around positions because they can all play across that sort of 7, 10, 11 line. So in any given moment, yeah, you might see Ibrahim Akali in a more central position in a given phase of play. But when you then look at their average positions in a game, yeah, we pretty much consider Ibrahim a wide player more often than not. Thank you. All the players, the staff, the federation, everybody in this building is extremely hungry for us returning back to the Independence Stadium. There's no doubt about that. You know, home advantage in Africa, it counts even more. Like home advantage in the world of football, if you look at the English Premier League or you look at Serie A, the home team wins about 50% of the time. On the African continent, whether it's in the inter-club competitions or it's in international football, the home team wins 70% of the time, which shows you the huge advantage playing at home has here on the African continent. Now, there's a multitude of reasons, the atmosphere that's created by the home fans, travel logistics, all of these things. So home advantage is huge. So not having that poses a challenge. It makes it harder to win. There's no doubt about that. But we can't do an awful lot about that. You know, we've got to say, you know, for me as a head coach, you know, for Alaji on the coaching staff, for Omar Colley, for all of the guys, we can't control this. And so the time spent thinking about something we cannot control is a little bit of wasted time for us. So we're just about going out, doing the best we can, putting on the best performances we can, and looking to win football matches. But also, let's not forget, the last qualification series, home matches were played outside of the Gambia as well, and qualification was possible. And so it doesn't make it any easier. We want to be at home as soon as possible. Hopefully, I'm going to go and visit the stadium again this week and check in on it and meet with some of the people involved in that. We hope October, so let's keep our fingers crossed on that. Our assurance is that these players and the staff will go out and give absolutely everything to put on a performance that reflects just the hopes and dreams of the Gambian supporters. We can't guarantee results. Football, you got to remember, Comoros are going out trying to win as well. Tunisia are going out trying to win as well. It's not like if I'm sitting in my office writing a report, no one's trying to stop me writing that report. But in football, there's another 11 guys trying to stop us from doing what we're trying to do. But we've already long since started. You know, even Alaji will tell you, even though I only landed in the country yesterday, we were on Zoom calls, WhatsApp calls, constantly checking up on players, following up on what we need to do for this camp. So the preparations have long since started in terms of how we can take our best form into these games. And if we go and play at our maximum level, we think that's good enough to win football matches. But we can't. I'll never promise anyone a win. What I will promise is the players and staff will do everything in their power to go on and put a performance that we hope the Gambian public are proud of. And if we do that often enough, I think we're going to win a lot of football matches. So, again, me and you're all very aware of Usman. He works very tirelessly. You know, I don't actually think he sleeps. But me and him have been working very closely just on the flight schedules of the players. You know, it all depends on the last game of a player. Of the squad I've listed, I believe 18 of them play Saturday or earlier. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday is their last game. Our plan is that those 18 players will land into Morocco alongside the staff on Sunday, and we'll do our first training session with those 18 on Monday. For the other 6 players, they play on Sunday for their clubs, and so obviously they won't be arriving in Morocco until Monday. And look, it's a tight week because the game being on a Wednesday, which we weren't overly happy with. We requested it to be played on, you know, both us and the other federation requested to be played on Saturday, but because of TV and all of this, it's been put on the Wednesday. So it means both teams have a very limited time to prepare. But we are getting each individual player, we are getting into Morocco, to our hotel, to the training camp as early as is physically possible. There'll be no guys turning up late because they want a day or two off. One other little thing is, like, I know I'm sort of surprised 1 or 2 questions haven't come up. I sort of have a bit of a game with my staff at predicting what questions will be asked, and I'm not going to ask those questions. And now you've lost your opportunity to. But what I would say is sometimes we are picking the best players who are available to us, okay? Now, there's a lot of names out there of players who are born abroad, and even some players who are played in the Gambia, who people would love to see given the opportunity. But remember, I am not a prison warden. I don't get to say, hey, you must come and do this. I have conversations. I've got a list of probably, I think it's 8 or 9 players who I've had conversations with this summer, who, for different reasons, are not ready to make that step to play for the Gambia. Yeah? Someone like Joseph Cisse, someone like Mamadou Ndiaye, were ready. They said, yep, we're ready to come, and when you call us, we'll come. There's other players who, I will tell you, have said to me, we're not interested. And that seems like a longer term answer. And there's some players who are just at the stage in their career who are saying, we're interested, but not today. And so there's a balance. So we're picking the best players who are available to us. If there's a player that supporters or media think, hey, he's doing really well, why isn't the coach picking him? It's probably because he's not available to us, okay? He's not available to us for one reason or another. Okay? Thank you very much, guys.